The Baobab Keeper. In the northern reaches of South Africa, where the Limpopo bushveld stretches golden and wild beneath endless skies, an ancient baobab tree stands. The local people call it Modimo, the Ancient One, and say it has stood in this exact spot for more than 2,000 years. Its trunk is massive, wider than a small house, its bark thick and grey like elephant hide, marked with the passage of countless seasons. Its branches reach toward the sky in twisted, gnarled shapes that look like roots growing upward, as if the tree were planted upside down by the gods themselves. The old stories say that the baobab was once vain, so beautiful that it boasted about its appearance to all the other trees. The gods, tired of its pride, pulled it from the earth and replanted it upside down to teach it humility. Now its roots reach for the stars, and its branches dig deep into wisdom. Whether the story is true or not, one thing is certain. This particular baobab is special. Animals come from across the bushveld to rest in its shade. Birds nest in its hollow trunk, which is large enough inside to shelter a dozen people from the sun. And those who sit beneath its branches with an open heart often find that the tree listens. For the past 7 years, the baobab has had a keeper. Her name is Kira, and she is half elven. Her mother was human, her father an elf from the old bloodlines that once walked freely through all the wild places of the world. From her elven father, she inherited pointed ears, amber eyes that could see clearly in starlight, and a deep, instinctive connection to growing things. From her human mother, she inherited a practical nature, strong hands, and a love of simple routines. Kira is not young, perhaps 90 years old by human reckoning. However, her elven blood means she appears no older than 30. Her dark hair, which she keeps in a long braid, shows only a few threads of silver. Her skin is sun-browned from years in the bushveld, and she moves with the quiet grace of someone who has spent decades walking softly through wild places. She lives in a small round cottage built against the baobab's trunk, constructed in the traditional way with mud walls and a thatched roof. The tree's massive roots curve protectively around her home, and one thick root forms a natural archway over her doorway. Inside, the cottage is simple: a sleeping mat, a small cooking hearth, shelves lined with clay jars of herbs and seeds, a table carved from fallen tamboti wood, and a window that looks out over the endless golden grassland. Every morning Kira wakes before dawn. This is the elven way, to greet the sun's arrival, to witness the transition from night to day. She steps outside into the cool pre-dawn air, and the bushveld is still holding its breath before the day begins. The first birds start to call. A fiery-necked nightjar gives its final churring song before seeking its daytime roost. A crimson-breasted shrike begins its melodious whistle from the nearby acacia tree. In the distance, a grey go-away bird calls its nasal warning. Go away! Go away! Kira walks slowly around the baobab, her bare feet quiet on the sandy earth. She places her palm against the trunk, feeling the ancient bark beneath her hand, rough and warm even in the cool morning. She closes her eyes and breathes. This is her morning ritual, a greeting, a listening. The baobab responds in its own way, not with words, but with feelings. a sense of presence, of awareness, of welcome. "Good morning, old one," Kira says softly. Another day begins. She can feel the tree's contentment, deep and slow, like the turning of seasons. As the sun rises over the eastern horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold, pink, and orange, Kira begins her daily work. She checks the tree's bark for signs of damage. Elephants sometimes come to scratch against it. While the baobab doesn't mind, Kira likes to treat any deep gouges with a mixture of clay and aloe to help them heal. She sweeps away the fallen leaves and seed pods from around the base, adding them to a compost pile where they'll break down into rich soil. She tends her small garden, vegetables and herbs that grow in the sandy soil, carefully watered from the clay jars she fills at the nearby waterhole. Tomatoes, spinach, pumpkins, wild garlic. She grows healing plants too: aloe vera, cancer bush, African wormwood, buchu. Some she uses herself, and some she trades with the small village 3 miles to the south. The bushveld is her home in every sense. She knows the placement of every termite mound within walking distance. She knows which marula trees bear the sweetest fruit, and which shepherd's trees have the deepest shade. She knows where the leopard has its den in the rocky outcrop to the north, and where the brown hyenas pass through on their nightly rounds. She is not lonely exactly. The tree is her constant companion. The animals are her neighbors. And every few weeks someone comes, a traveler, a seeker, someone drawn by rumor or instinct or desperate need to the ancient baobab that listens. But sometimes, in the hottest part of the afternoon, when even the cicadas fall silent, Kira sits in the shade and wonders what it would be like to have not just visitors, but a friend, someone to share the quiet days with, someone to talk to when the stars come out and the night grows deep. She doesn't know that everything is about to change. It happens on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn, when the grass has turned golden and dry, and the air carries the promise of the coming rainy season. Kira is working in her garden, carefully watering her plants from a clay jar, when she hears a sound that doesn't belong. It's a low, rumbling growl, but not threatening, more frustrated, accompanied by a strange scraping, scratching sound. Kira sets down her jar and moves quietly toward the sound. Years of ranging have taught her to walk silently, and her elven blood makes her naturally stealthy. She circles around a dense cluster of buffalo thorn bushes, following the noise. What she finds makes her stop in her tracks. There, wedged head first into a hollow log, struggling and growling and generally making a fuss about it, is a honey badger. Now, honey badgers have a reputation. They're known throughout Africa as the most fearless creatures alive, willing to fight anything, from lions to leopards to angry bees. They're tough, aggressive, and absolutely uninterested in backing down from any challenge. This particular honey badger appears to have challenged a log and lost. The creature's rear half, stocky body covered in coarse grey and black fur, powerful legs with long digging claws, short tail thrashing in irritation, is sticking out of the log. Its front half, including its head, is thoroughly stuck inside. Kira watches for a moment, trying not to smile. The honey badger growls again, more frustrated than fierce, and its legs scrabble uselessly at the ground. "Are you trapped?" Kira asks gently. The honey badger freezes, then makes a slight, embarrassed sound that seems to mean maybe. Kira moves closer carefully. Even when stuck, a honey badger can be dangerous. They have powerful jaws and a bite that can crack bone. "I'm going to help you," she says in her softest voice. "But you have to stay calm, all right?" Another small sound. This one is more agreeable. Kira circles the log, examining the situation. The badger's head is wedged in the narrow end of the hollow log, drawn in by the smell of honey from a wild hive that must have been inside. The opening is just slightly too small for the badger to back out of easily, and panic has made it wedge itself in tighter. "Hold still," Kira says. She places her hands on either side of the log opening and begins to pull gently, widening the gap. Her 11 strength, though she rarely has cause to use it, makes the task possible. The wood creaks and groans. "Back up now," she instructs. Slowly. The honey badger pushes backwards with its powerful legs, and with Kira holding the opening wide, its head slides free. The creature stumbles backwards, shaking its head, then sits on its haunches and looks up at her with bright, intelligent black eyes. Up close, Kira can see it's a young male, probably only 2 or 3 years old. His mask-like facial markings are distinct, with the characteristic white and grey stripe running from his head down his back. His nose is smudged with dirt and tree bark, and he looks thoroughly disgruntled. "There," Kira says, sitting back on her heels. "You're free, though you might want to be more careful about sticking your head into strange holes." The honey badger makes a sound that might be agreement or might be indignation. It's hard to tell with honey badgers. Then, instead of running off as Kira expects, the creature waddles closer. It sniffs her hands, her knees, her feet. It looks up at her with those bright eyes. And then it does something extraordinary. It bows. Not deeply, not dramatically, just a slight lowering of its head, a gesture of acknowledgement and gratitude. Kira stares. In all her years as a ranger, she's seen animals do many remarkable things, but she's never seen a honey badger bow. "You're welcome," she says softly. "What's your name, little fierce one?" The honey badger makes a chattering sound. It almost sounds like Duma. "Duma," Kira repeats. "Is that you?" The badger chatters again, clearly pleased. "Well, Duma, you're welcome to visit the Baobab any time, but please try to avoid getting stuck in things. My heart can't take too much excitement." Duma makes a sound that seems remarkably like laughter, a huffing, chuckling noise, and then waddles off into the bushveld, presumably to find trouble elsewhere. Kira watches him go, smiling. Then she returns to her garden, thinking nothing more of it. But the next morning, When she steps outside for her dawn walk around the Baobab, she finds Duma curled up on her doorstep, fast asleep, and beside him, placed carefully on a flat stone, is a gift, a perfect bird's egg, unbroken. Over the following days, Duma makes himself at home. Honey badgers are naturally solitary creatures, fiercely independent and not given to forming attachments. But Duma seems to be an exception to every rule. He follows Kira through her daily routines, keeping a respectful distance but always present. When she tends her garden, he digs his own holes nearby, sometimes helpful, more often not. When she gathers herbs in the bushveld, he waddles along behind her, occasionally disappearing to investigate something interesting, but always returning. At night, he curls up near her cottage door, keeping watch in his own fierce way. And every morning, without fail, Kira finds a gift, a smooth stone, an interesting feather, a perfectly round seed pod, a fragment of sun-bleached bone carved by wind and time into an interesting shape. Duma places these offerings carefully on the flat stone by her door, as if to say, "I belong here too." Kira finds she enjoys the company immensely. Duma is not a chatty companion. Honey badgers aren't much for conversation, but his presence is comfortable, solid, real. She talks to him anyway, the way she talks to the Baobab, and Duma listens with what appears to be genuine interest, his small eyes bright and intelligent. "You know," she tells him one evening, as they sit together watching the sun set over the bushveld, "you're the first real friend I've had in a very long time." Duma makes a soft, pleased sound and inches closer until his warm, solid body is pressed against her leg. The tree seems pleased too. Kira can feel it, a sense of contentment radiating from the ancient baobab, as if it approves of this development. 3 weeks after Duma's arrival, their quiet routine is interrupted. It's late afternoon, the hottest part of the day, when Kira is resting in the shade of the baobab with a cup of bush tea. Duma is nearby, dozing in the heat, occasionally twitching as he dreams of whatever honey badgers dream about. Kira sees the figure approaching from a long way off. The bushveld is mostly flat here, and her elven eyes are sharp. At first, she thinks it might be a person from the village, perhaps coming to trade or to seek the tree's wisdom. But as the figure draws closer, she realizes this is no human. The walker is tall, very tall, perhaps 7 feet, and powerfully built, with broad shoulders and thick arms. The skin is greenish-gray, the color of storm clouds. As the figure comes closer still, Kira can make out tusks protruding from a strong jaw, small dark eyes deep set beneath a heavy brow, and black hair pulled back in a warrior's knot. An orc. Kira has seen orcs before, years ago when she traveled more widely. There aren't many left in the world, most having retreated to their own lands far to the north. However, occasionally one still walks the old roads, seeking something or running from something. This orc is walking with purpose but without urgency, and Kira notices something important. No weapons, no armor, just simple traveler's clothing, loose cotton trousers, a worn tunic, a leather pack slung over one shoulder, and a walking staff that's clearly for walking, not fighting. Duma has noticed too. The honey badger is on his feet, alert but not aggressive. His posture is curious rather than defensive, which Kira takes as a good sign. Animals know things that even elves sometimes miss. The orc stops about 20 feet from the Baobab, clearly sensing that this is a threshold that shouldn't be crossed without permission. "Greetings," the orc says, and the voice is deep and rumbling, but not unkind. Female, Kira realizes. I mean, no harm. I'm seeking the wisdom tree, the Baobab they call Modimo. "You've found it," Kira says, standing slowly and dusting off her trousers. "I'm Kira. I keep this place. You're welcome here." The orc nods, a gesture of respect. "My name is Thoka. I've traveled far." Up close, Kira can see the weariness in Thoka's face. Not physical exhaustion exactly. Orcs are sturdy, built for endurance, but something more profound. Soul weariness, perhaps, the kind that comes from carrying heavy burdens for too long. "Come," Kira says, gesturing to the shade beneath the Baobab. "Sit. Rest. There's water, and I have food if you're hungry." Thoka's face shows surprise, then gratitude. "You're kind. Not everyone welcomes an orc." "Not everyone welcomes a half-elf either," Kira says with a slight smile. "We outcasts should stick together." Something eases in Thoka's expression. She moves into the shade and sits, lowering herself carefully to the ground with her back against the baobab's trunk. Kira notices how gently she touches the bark, how reverently, despite her fearsome appearance. Kira brings water in a clay cup and a plate of food, dried fruit, nuts, and fresh bread she baked yesterday. Thoka accepts both with another nod of thanks and eats slowly, savoring each bite as if it's been a long time since she ate with any pleasure. Duma waddles over to investigate this new visitor. Thoka watches the honey badger approach with what might be amusement. "That's Duma," Kira says. "He's well, I suppose he's my friend." "A honey badger," Thoka says, her deep voice carrying a note of respect. "Fearless creatures. I've fought alongside warriors less brave." Duma, apparently pleased by this assessment, sits down near Thoka's feet and makes a chattering sound. Thoka smiles, a startling expression on her fierce face, but genuine and warm. "He says I have good judgment." Kira blinks. "You can understand him?" "I've spent many years learning to listen," Thoka says. "Not just to words, to what lies beneath them." They sit in comfortable silence for a while, sharing the shade and the peace. The bushveld hums around them, cicadas singing, birds calling, the whisper of wind through dry grass. Finally, Thoka speaks again. "I came here seeking guidance. I've heard that this tree, that it helps those who are lost." "It listens," Kira says gently, "and sometimes, in the listening, we find our own answers." Thoka nods slowly. "I was a warrior," she says, her voice low. "For 60 years I fought. I was good at it, Strong, fierce. I protected my clan, defended our territories, led raids, and won battles. It was all I knew, all I was. She pauses, looking at her large, scarred, powerful hands built for gripping weapons. Then, 5 years ago, the wars ended. Our clan made peace with our neighbors. Real peace, not just a temporary truce. And I realized, she trails off, struggling with words, that you didn't know who you were without the fighting. Kira finishes softly. Thoka looks at her, and in those dark orc eyes, Kira sees pain and confusion and loss. Yes, Thoka says, exactly that. My clan, they're thriving now, building things, creating things. They've found new purposes, farming, trading, crafting, storytelling. But I tried. I tried so hard. But every time I pick up a plow instead of a sword, every time I hammer metal into horseshoes instead of blades, I feel empty, lost. So you're wandering, Kira says, for 2 years now, looking for, I don't even know what, a purpose, a place, a reason to be. Thoka's voice drops even lower. Sometimes I wonder if there's anything left inside me except the warrior. And if that warrior has no battles left to fight, what am I? The sun has lowered now, painting the bushveld in golden light. The shadows are long. The air is beginning to cool. Come, Kira says, standing. The tree will listen best in the twilight. That's when the wisdom flows most clearly. They wait for the sun to set fully, the three of them, half-elf, orc, and honey badger, sitting in the growing darkness beneath the ancient Baobab. The bushveld transforms at twilight. The day birds fall silent, and the night birds begin their songs. Bats emerge from the baobab's hollow trunk, wheeling out into the darkening sky to hunt insects. The temperature drops, and the earth releases the heat it stored all day, creating little currents of warm air that smell of dust and grass, and the distant promise of rain. Kira has lit a small fire in the fire pit near her cottage, not for warmth, but for light, and for the comfort of its presence. The flames dance and flicker, casting moving shadows across the baobab's massive trunk. Tell me, Kira says gently, what do you love? Not what you're good at, not what you were trained for. What makes your heart feel full? Thoka is quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. When she finally speaks, her voice is almost hesitant, as if she's sharing a secret. Stories, she says. When I was young, before the warrior training consumed everything, I loved stories. My grandmother would tell tales of the old days, of heroes and tricksters and magic. I would sit at her feet for hours, listening, imagining. She trails off, then continues. During the wars, in the camps at night, I would tell stories to the younger warriors, to help them sleep, to give them something besides fear to think about. They said I was good at it, that my stories helped. Kira smiles. Did you stop telling stories when the wars ended? Yes. I thought stories were just for warriors, for camps and battles and long marches. I didn't think they had a place in peacetime. Thoka shakes her head. It sounds foolish now. Not foolish, Kira says, just confused. You thought you had to leave your old self completely behind to find a new one. But maybe that's not how it works. Thoka looks at her, hope and uncertainty warring in her expression. Kira places her hand on the baobab's trunk. The tree wants to show you something. Are you ready? Thoka nods. Close your eyes, Kira instructs. Place your hand on the bark. Breathe and listen. Thoka does as instructed, placing one large hand against the ancient bark. She closes her eyes. For a moment, nothing seems to happen. Then Thoka's breath catches. Her hand spreads wider against the bark, as if reaching for more contact. Her face, fierce and scarred in the firelight, softens with wonder. Kira can feel it too, through her own connection to the tree. A gentle flow of images, feelings, understanding. The baobab doesn't speak in words, but in something deeper, a language older than words. The tree shows Thoka its own story, how it began as a small seedling, vulnerable and alone, how it grew slowly, so slowly, adding ring after ring of wood, year by year, century by century, how it weathered droughts and storms, elephants and fires, how it learned that strength isn't just about standing firm, but also about bending, about adapting, about serving the needs of the world around it. The tree shows her the animals that have sheltered in its branches, generations of birds, nests, stacked upon nests, the bees that made their hives in its trunk, producing golden honey, the elephants that came to scrape their tusks against its bark, finding relief, the countless travelers who rested in its shade, taking comfort from its presence. The tree shows her how nothing is wasted, how every skill, every experience, every hard-won lesson becomes part of who you are, not something to discard, but something to transform. A warrior's strength can become a protector's strength. A warrior's courage can become a storyteller's courage. The bravery to speak truths, to preserve histories, to give voice to those who cannot speak for themselves. A warrior's discipline can become a teacher's discipline, a guide's discipline, a keeper's discipline. You do not stop being what you were. You grow new branches from the same strong trunk. When Thoka finally opens her eyes, there are tears on her cheeks, surprising on that fierce face, but not unwelcome. Thank you, she whispers to the tree, to Kira, to the night itself. Thank you. They sit in silence for a while longer, letting the wisdom settle. Finally, Thoka speaks again. I think I need to go back to my clan, not to farm or forge, though there's honor in those things, but to gather the stories, all the stories of our people, the old tales, the new tales, the tales of warriors and farmers and craftspeople, to preserve them, to tell them, to make sure nothing is forgotten. A story keeper, Kira says softly. Every kind needs one. Yes, Thoka says, and for the first time since her arrival, her voice carries certainty, purpose. A story keeper, that's what I'll be. I'll use my warrior's discipline to learn every tale, my warrior's memory to hold them true, and my warrior's strength to travel far and gather stories from all the orc clans. Duma makes an approving chittering sound. Thoka laughs, a deep, genuine laugh that transforms her entire face. Even the honey badger agrees. That's how I know it's right. Thoka stays for 3 more days, resting and planning. She tells Kira stories in the evenings by the fire, tales of orc heroes and tricksters, of battles won and lost, of great loves and terrible betrayals, and the small, quiet moments that matter more than any of those dramatic things. Kira shares her own stories, elven legends passed down from her father, human folk tales learned from her mother, and the stories she's observed in her years as a ranger. The story of the leopard who adopted an orphaned baboon. The story of the tortoise who saved the river. The story of the drought that taught compassion. Duma listens to all of it, occasionally adding his own commentary in chatters and growls that somehow both Kira and Thoka understand. On the morning of the 4th day, Thoka prepares to leave. "I can't thank you enough," she tells Kira, her pack shouldered, her walking staff in hand. "You and the tree, you've given me back my life." "The tree listens," Kira says. "You did the hard work of hearing." Thoka smiles, then does something unexpected. She pulls from her pack a carved wooden token, a small disc with an orcish symbol etched into it. "This is a story token," she explains. "In my clan, we give them to those whose stories we want to remember. I would be honored if you'd accept it. So I remember to tell your story, the half-elf keeper of the ancient tree, who helps lost souls find themselves." Kira takes the token, touched. "I'm honored." "Thank you." "And you," Thoka says, crouching down to address Duma directly. "You fierce little guardian, keep her safe." Duma chatters agreeably, and Thoka laughs. They watch her walk away across the golden bushveld, her figure growing smaller in the distance until she disappears beyond a rise in the land, heading north toward home and purpose. Kira holds the story token, feeling its smooth weight in her palm. "Well," she says to Duma, "I suppose that's what we do here. We listen, we help, we keep the tree's wisdom." Duma makes a sound that clearly means, "and we're very good at it." Kira laughs and scratches behind his ears in the spot he loves most. "Yes, we are." The seasons turn in the bushveld. The rains come, transforming the golden grass to green, filling the waterholes, bringing new life to everything. The baobab blooms, huge white flowers that open at night, filling the air with a sweet, heavy scent and attracting hawk moths with wings as large as hands. Kira collects the flowers to dry for tea, and Duma watches, fascinated by the enormous moths. Their routine deepens and solidifies. Kira wakes before dawn, greets the tree, and tends her garden. Duma brings his morning gifts, investigates interesting holes, and occasionally gets into minor trouble that Kira has to rescue him from. They share meals, share silence, share the endless sky and the turning of days. And people come. Word spreads, as it always does, about the ancient baobab that listens, the half-elf keeper who welcomes all, the strange honey badger who judges character with uncanny accuracy. A dwarf prospector comes, seeking guidance about whether to abandon an empty mine or keep digging. The tree shows him the value of knowing when to stop, when to cut losses, and when to redirect effort. He lives at peace with his decision to seal the mine and become a teacher instead, passing on his knowledge to younger prospectors. An elderly human woman comes, grieving her deceased husband, unsure how to live without him after 50 years together. The tree shows her that love doesn't end with death, that the roots of connection run deeper than one lifetime, and that she carries him with her in every choice she makes, with the wisdom he helped her gain. She leaves still sad, but no longer lost. A young halfling comes, terrified of disappointing their family, who expect them to take over the family business. The tree shows them that disappointment is temporary, but living a false life is forever. The halfling leaves with the courage to have the hard conversation, to choose their own path. Kira learns that this is her purpose, not just to keep the tree, but to witness these transformations, to hold space for people's pain, confusion, and searching, to be present while the ancient wisdom does its work. And Duma, surprisingly, proves essential to the process. His presence relaxes visitors and makes them feel safe. Animals, Kira has learned, are truth tellers. If Duma accepts someone, others feel permission to trust them too. Sometimes, late at night, after a visitor has left, Kira sits with her back against the baobab and feels its contentment. The tree is fulfilled by its purpose to give shade, to offer wisdom, to serve as a constant in an ever-changing world. And Kira realizes she is fulfilled too. This life she's built, simple, quiet, rooted in one place, is everything she needed. She is no longer lonely. She has Duma's fierce companionship, the tree's ancient presence, and the steady stream of souls who find their way here seeking answers. She thinks of Thoka sometimes, wondering if the orc story keeper is thriving in her new purpose. She likes to imagine Thoka traveling from village to village, gathering tales, preserving them, passing them on. We all find our place, Kira thinks. Sometimes we just need help listening for where we're called to be. As night falls over the Limpopo bushveld, the stars emerge, thousands of them, millions of them spread across the sky in a glittering river. The Southern Cross hangs low on the horizon. The Milky Way arches overhead, so bright and dense it looks like a bridge between worlds. Kira sits outside her cottage with Duma curled against her side, warm, solid, and content. The baobab looms above them, its twisted branches dark against the star-filled sky, its ancient trunk holding centuries of wisdom. Tomorrow there will be morning routines. The greeting of the tree, the tending of the garden, the simple acts that make up a life. There might be a visitor or there might not. Either way, the day will unfold as it should. But tonight there is only this: peace, presence, purpose. The bushveld is breathing around them, the stars wheeling overhead. The ancient tree stands as a witness. Kira rests her hand on Duma's warm back and feels his steady breathing. She closes her eyes and sends her gratitude to the tree, to the land, to whatever force brought her here 7 years ago to become keeper of this sacred place. The tree responds with its wordless warmth, its deep contentment, its eternal patience. All is well, all is as it should be. Sleep, dear wanderer, rest beneath these stars, sheltered by ancient wisdom. The baobab stands watch through the darkness, the honey badger keeps guard, and in the morning the sun will rise again over the golden grassland, bringing another day of simple grace. Dream of vast skies and gentle purpose. Dream of finding your place in the world. Dream of the stories that make you who you are, waiting to be told. The bushveld cradles you in its vast, wild peace. Sleep well until the next story finds its way to you.